This is Turkey once again, the former spokesperson for a contract in FDotSCA's American cultural tradition and or cultural memory complaint department. I'm here first of all to inform you that I have a new position. I am currently, or going to be, I believe my position formally starts on January 20th. For whatever reason that might be the date, I'm not entirely sure, or at least there's some doubt concerning whether it is associated with the traditional changing of the guard or some original aspect of a cultural tradition that we are reinventing here at a contract in FDotSCA. However, when I do assume my new office, I'm proud to proclaim that it will be as the chief, head, and or secretary of the SIA, that is the Stochastic Intelligence Agency. And as the future head of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency, the SIA, what I would like to do today is briefly account for some of the discrepancies between the space-time travel communication coordinate system and the traditional manner of intentionality that functions in communication systems, according to most linguists and theorists, all the way back from Ferdinand de Saussure, the early scholar of signification, through Charles Peirce, and as well as Roman Jakobson. And what contract in FDotSCA wanted me to explain is that using space-time travel communication coordinates allows for a certain amount of indeterminacy in the interpretation of meaning as either intentionality or phenomenon. And the distinction between intentionality and phenomenon bears on this aspect of probability and we could say indeterminacy theory that corresponds both to the number of sets that one could allow oneself to utilize as an interpretive basis, but also whether or not people are just randomly looking at the videos that are up, rather than using the space-time travel communication coordinate system to communicate. Okay, let me provide a simple example. So yesterday we noticed that our subscribers dropped from 119 to 118. Now, was that a space-time travel communication coordinate significant loss of a subscriber, or just some disgruntled Trumpy that accidentally subscribed to our network and then realized that it just wasn't for him? Well, that's a question. It raises the possibility: phenomenon or communication. Say you're walking down the street and you trip. Is that phenomenon or communication? Were you trying to tell somebody, look, I'm tripping out? Was it a cry for help, or was it just an accident? Phenomenon. And the stochastic or indeterminate nature of space-time travel communication coordinates as occupying simultaneously an event of phenomenon and an event of communication raises all kinds of interesting questions in terms of semiotics of communication and information systems that either haven't been raised before or simply haven't been raised in relationship to the possibilities of space-time travel and interdimensionality in interdimensionality of universes such as the contract in FDotSCA YouTubers. Correct? Yes. So that's what we're going to explore today, and we're going to explore today utilizing the number 117, our current number of subscribers. Yes, indeed. And the reason we're going to do that is because there's a phenomenon of synchronicity involved now in the number 117. And that number and that synchronicity is very simple. That at 117, if you look up the space-time travel communication coordinate referent in the complex set of space-time travel communication coordinates, you'll recall that there's both a complex set and a simple set. Now, neither the complex set nor the simple set are particularly simple, but the reason that the complex set is called the complex set is because it is a set of sets rather than a set of individual items. Now, even within the individual item set, you could say that it is a set of sets, as the fact that any album, well, almost most albums contain more than one song, and therefore an album is a set of songs. So that's complex, yes, and not simple. If an album was just an album and had one song, that would be simple, but it's already complex. Maybe, and I will raise that as the future chief secretary and or head of the Stochastic Stochastic Intelligence Agency, I will raise the possibility with a contract in FDotSCA of changing the name of the simple space-time travel communication coordinate set to the complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, and the complex space-time travel communication coordinate set to the even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate set. It seems like a good idea. Now, I also want to remind my readers, my listeners, my viewers, my fans, that I am in fact a turkey, not a chicken. And the only reason I appear as a chicken in this video is because the Apple Memoji program has no representation of a chicken whatsoever. A turkey whatsoever. And I've had to use this chicken picture. It's as I've said before, I'm not a chicken, and I don't wish to be associated with chickens. However, I have no options currently available. If anyone at Apple is listening, you might want to do something about that. I'm gonna sign off for now because the program is getting a little sketchy, and I think my speech and my image is getting off kilter. So let's see if we can get this one into the computer, and I'll begin talking about the number 117 from the point of view of the future Stochastic Intelligence Agency head, chief, and/or secretary. Hello, this is Turkey, once again, the past and/or present spokesperson for the American cultural tradition and/or cultural memory complaint department, and the future secretary and/or head and/or chief of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency. And once again, we are discussing the number 117 in terms of stochasm, information systems, set theory, communication coordinate use, and doing so in both a theoretical and pragmatic fashion, so that you'll be able to apply the theory to your use of communication coordinate systems and perhaps space-time travel if you have such aptitude. Yes, so let's return to the number 17, which, as I was saying, the number of subscribers to a contract in through Theta's YouTube channel was reduced to 117. And this raises the question, was this phenomenon, the reduction of subscribers, an act of communication or a random event? And we'll get to what this means, Occam's razor, but Occam's razor tells us that it is a form of communication. And the reason that it's a form of communication is the following. Because if we look in the past and or present set of space-time travel communication coordinates, which is referred to as the complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, which is going to be, I assume, via my recommendations in the future even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, with the simple space-time travel communication coordinate set taking over the nominalization complex space-time travel communication coordinate set. But within the current complex space-time travel communication coordinate set and future even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, the number 117 is designated by the playlist for Rudrish Mahathapa and Rudrish this is a difficult word for me to pronounce. Perhaps less difficult for me to pronounce than contract in through Theta with his dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia continuum. However, even for me, let me look at the spelling of this word again and see if I can phoneticize it out letter by letter. Mahathapa, either Mahathapa or Mahathapa, Mahanthapa, Rudrish Mahanthapa. Yes, Rudrish Mahanthapa. I think that's how you pronounce it. Now, it's either Rudrish Mahanthapa or Rudrish Mahanthapa, but I believe it's Rudrish Mahanthapa. Now, the very fact that I could even phoneticize it to begin with and spell it out and sound it out letter by letter is something that's unavailable to a contract in through Theta because of the dysgraphia, the dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia continuum that makes it difficult for him to do such. And this may be the reason why I was asked to perform the task of explaining all of these details of stochastic systems of information and communication versus phenomenon, because this is going to be a certain amount of reading that's required today, and that kind of reading is just really not a contract in through Theta's forte, and no offense, but that certainly is the case. So let's move on. So the number of subscribers and this current complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, Rudrish Mahanthapa, are signified by the number 117. Now, why is that a synchronicity? Well, it is precisely a synchronicity because just yesterday, a contract in through Theta reorganized and redeveloped the complex space-time travel, current complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, future, even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, Rudrish Mahanthapa. You see what I'm saying? So, the number today refers to the work we did yesterday, and that is what's called, in both synchronicity theory and in psychological theory, did I say synchronicity theory? I meant systems analysis theory. It's called, both in systems analysis theory and in psychological theory, a synchronicity. And as I think I mentioned Occam's razor earlier. If I didn't, I'm going to mention it now. Occam's razor suggests that and we'll read a little entry on what Occam's razor is and why it perhaps was developed, but that the simplest solution set to any problem or question is probably the most reasonable answer. And if we were going to regard the problem of the number 117 subscribers, the problem being the question of, is this an act of communication? Did this guy trip? Or is he trying to tell us that he's tripping out? Is it a phenomenon? Is it an arbitrary phenomenon? Or does it relate as an act of communication to the work a contract in Theta did yesterday in reorganizing the playlist Rudrish Mahanthapa, whose last name, a contract in Theta, but less so for me, Turkey, would have a very difficult time phoneticizing letter by letter because of his unique way of reading as a result of having this continuum of dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia. Yes, and so we're going to discuss. First of all, let's begin with this question of what a synchronicity is and how it's developed in both psychological theory by the philosopher and psychiatrist Carl Jung, and then in systems theory, how this idea plays out in a different way, but how also both of these explanations of the phenomenon of synchronicity are relevant to the communication system that we are working with here, that involves this problem of phenomenon or intentionality as communication, that involves, of course, as you well know, seeing as communicating, and the performance of seeing as communicating, practiced within the system as views as form of communication. And in this instance, the reduction of subscribers as form of communication, which is observable as a numerical value. Yes, so we'll begin with that. Synchronicity! Coming up, I have to sign out because, again, I'm losing my synchronicity in a different sense with visual image of my face as a chicken, even though I'm a turkey, and the corresponding sounds that are produced by my discourse. That is called in film theory a audio-visual synchronicity problem, which is a result of the Apple Memoji program. Anyone out there from Apple is listening, you might want to correct this. Hello, this is Turkey once again, and continuing with our discussion, therefore, the very fact that it was merely yesterday that a contract in Theta reorganized the playlist Rudrish Mahanthapa, which corresponds to number 117 in the past and or present complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, soon to be the future, even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate set, number 117, is precisely what constitutes a synchronicity. Yes, and the proximity of yesterday and today, and the fact that the coordinate sets today correspond with the work that was done yesterday, constitutes the synchronicity. Now, had the number stayed at 119, which according to the if 6 was 9 and 9 was 6, grammar utilized by the space-time, both the space-time travel communication coordinate set and the brutal reality examination numerical value set, then would there be a synchronicity? No, there would not, because within the if 6 was 9 and 9 was 6 grammar of both the space-time travel communication coordinate sets and the brutal reality examination sets, the number 19, which corresponds with the number 116, represents the album set Roxy Music, and Roxy Music is not Rudrish Mahanthapa, you see? And therefore there is no synchronicity because there is no coinciding, as in the word coincidence. Now, had the number been reduced to 118, would there be synchronicity? No, because the number 118 corresponds to the communication coordinate set Santana, as in Carlos Santana. Is Carlos Santana Rudrish Mahanthapa? No, Carlos Santana is not Rudrish Mahanthapa. Therefore, there is no synchronicity because there is no coinciding. Had the number been reduced to 116, would there be a coincidence and a synchronicity? No, because the number 1 synchronicity in the grammar of if 6 was 9, and if 9 was 6, becomes 119, and the number 119 refers to the playlist Shabaka or Shabaka Hutchings, and is Shabaka Hutchings Rudrish Mahanthapa? No. Shabaka Hutchings is Shabaka Hutchings, and Rudrish Mahanthapa is Rudrish Mahanthapa, and those two identities share nothing in common, as far as I know. I may be mistaken, they may be twins separated at birth, but I seriously doubt so. And therefore, there is no coincidence and there is no synchronicity. So there is a synchronicity because Rudrish Mahanthapa is Rudrish Mahanthapa. Following so far, yes. So now let's move on and discuss a little bit about what synchronicity means, both in psychological theory, and we'll begin with that. We'll begin with the entry in Wikipedia that's titled Synchronicity, and it refers to Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, psychologist, and philosopher's definition and discovery of this phenomenon in human consciousness. Let's proceed. I think I can go a little bit further on this program before it starts to separate and there becomes a lack of synchronicity problem. Let's see how we go. All right. So I'm looking at the. I'm going to go ahead and read it. I'm looking at the Synchronicity site. It says this article is about the Jungian concept. For further uses, see Synchronicity, disambiguation, acausal redirects here for the concept in systems theory, which we certainly want to address because it's very important in what we do. In fact, systems theory in general and set theory as well is important in just about everything that a contracting phi through theta does. And there's been some misunderstanding about contracting phi through theta's use of both set theory and systems theory that, as the future director of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency, I very much hope to clear up. And we certainly will spend a lot of our resources doing so. If there continues to be a discussion of contracting phi through theta's misuse of acausal system theory and or set theory, then we will attempt to resolve it. And we will do so without, seeking out, blame and culpability and retribution for all those individuals, who have, unsubscribed or desubscribed or dissubscribed or missubscribed to a contracting phi through theta, screwing up the entire space-time travel communication coordinate system in various ways and referring to numbers that are absolute nonsense. Okay, but we won't do that. We're going to be more generous. All right, and that doesn't happen until January 20th in any case. Let me go ahead and I'm running out of time. I think maybe I should cut this one off. I'll stop here now, and I promise to come back and try to read a few paragraphs very quickly and briefly, just outlining the idea in Jungian psychology of this concept of synchronicity, and then we'll move on to acausal systems theory, and I'll read a bit of that, and then I'll discuss the rationale for recognizing the number 117 as the number 117 and Rudresh Mahantapa as Rudresh Mahantapa, and the two phenomenons of identity and convergence representing a synchronicity rather than a random coincidence or a random event, as in this term that Carl Jung comes up with, which I believe for example, as opposed to, we could say synchronicity as opposed to a superstitious association of one set of items with another set of items. For example, the superstitious would be the association of the number 13 and the day of the week Friday with black cats and broken mirrors and such stuff, falling off ladders or things like that. And we could say that this word superstitious also applies to the coincidence of every Thursday, every fourth Thursday. Let's say every fourth Thursday of November is associated with pumpkin pie and or turkey dinner. The slaughter, the horrible slaughter and consumption of the intelligent species known as turkey on this fourth Thursday of every November, because of some superstitious association of some imaginary mythological event that probably never happened, and the relationship to pumpkin pie is as we've attempted to convince a contracting phi through theta, is equally ridiculous. So that's coincidence, as opposed to the phenomenon of synchronicity, which has both perhaps positive and negative associations as a psychological value, and the development of consciousness, as well as the confusion of consciousness in instances in which such ambiguity and indeterminacy surrounding event horizon and communication system might lead to psychosis or some other not particularly welcome psychological phenomenon. Anyway, that's what we promised to discuss and get to as we do the reading, which I will begin in the next installment briefly. Hello! Once again, here we are at the Jungian Synchronicity site presented by Wikipedia, and as promised, I'm going to attempt to read through the article without much further interruption. We do have some dogs chewing on some bones in the background, so put up with that. These dogs apparently are smaller than some of contracting phi through theta's other dogs. You can tell by the higher pitched voices and the way they nibble quickly rather than slowly and thoroughly upon the bones. In any case, let's get to the reading of synchronicity, the Jungian concept as presented by Wikipedia. And here it is. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Always free all the time. This article is about the Jungian concept. For other uses, see synchronicity, disambiguation. Acausal, which we will get to, redirects here. For the concept in systems theory, which we will get to, see acausal system. Synchronicity, German, Syncronicity, is a concept introduced by analytical psychiatrist Carl Jung to describe events that coincide in time, and I would argue space as well, because without space there can be no time, and what have you got if you've only got time on your hands? You got nothing, you got no space, you gotta have the space to have the time, and appear meaningfully related. Now, okay, so let's disentangle that idea of space and time. Say something happens on the other side of the world, and you're doing something now. Well, is it in the same space? Well, it's in the same local space, in terms of global space. But it won't become synchronicity unless you're aware of it. So you have to be aware of that space. So being aware of a space creates a relationship and syncretic, connection between the two spaces. You could say that synchronicity across spaces and times exists in the way that folded space does, as opposed to flat space. And as such, we need to identify that synchronicity is a space-time phenomenon, not a strictly temporal phenomenon. Strictly temporal phenomenons are described as durations, and synchronicity is not, strictly speaking, merely a duration, but a duration with significance because of a proximity in the coordinate system of space and time. Okay, having argued that, let's get back to the article. a concept introduced by analytical psychiatrist Carl Jung to describe events that coincide in space and time. I added the space, and appear meaningfully related, yet lack a discoverable causal connection, like space-time travel communication coordinate use, and Jung held this was a healthy function of the mind. Healthy, you see. No, not like those pesky superstitions and taboos. A healthy function of mind that can become harmful. It can become harmful within psychosis, but not necessarily harmful. Can be a creative process, yes. And I will continue to add little snippets of information as I see fit, because it's part of my future responsibility as the future director, chief, secretary, and/or head of a contracting fee through Theta's Stochastic Intelligence Agency. Jung developed the theory as a hypothetical non-causal principle serving as the intersubjective or philosophically objective connection between these seemingly meaningless seemingly meaningful. What would be meaningless? Well, what would be meaningless is if the space-time telecommunication coordinate number remained at 119 within the system, and the grammatical chiasmic relationship that 6s and 9s have within that system, and referred to Roxy music. Is Roxy music Rudrash Malantapa? No, Roxy music is not Rudrash Malantapa. Roxy music is Roxy music. Rudrash Malantapa is Rudrash Malantapa, and hence the connective organization of the two terms in the number 117 refer to a synchronicity, which would not be there if the number was 119. That would be meaningless. Okay, let's reread that sentence once again. Jung developed the theory as a hypothetical non-causal principle serving as the intersubjective or philosophical objective connection between these seemingly meaningful, as in Rudrash Malantapa is Rudrash Malantapa, coincidences. After coining the term in the late 1920s, Jung developed the concept with physicist Wolfgang Pauli through correspondence in their 1952 work, The Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche. Physics here representing nature, and the psyche representing the psyche. This culminated in the Pauli-Jung conjecture. Jung and Pauli's view was that just as causal connections can provide a meaningful understanding of the psyche and the world, so too may acausal connections, such as synchronicity. A 2016 study found 70% of therapists agreed synchronicity experiences could be useful for therapy. Analytical psychologists hold that individuals must understand the compensatory meaning of these experiences to enhance consciousness rather than merely build up superstitions. And as we referred to before, superstitions are those silly ideas in the mind that associate random things with other random things. Like, for example, they associate Friday and the date of the week, that day of the week, named after Frey in Norse mythology, and the number 13, for whatever reason that has a particular value, as belonging to this set of values that include black cats, broken mirrors, and falling off ladders, as well as the fourth Thursday of the month, which in November is often associated randomly with things like killing turkeys, which should be disavowed and never performed. And in fact, all turkeys deserve pardons, whether those turkeys are the sons of the president or the relatives of the president or have no relationship to the president. The president should pardon all turkeys, whether the turkeys are guilty of drug possession or illegal possession of a firearm. It doesn't much matter, because the slaughter of turkeys has gone on much too long. And this superstitious association of the turkey and the fourth Thursday of every November is a superstition that's very harmful to both the ethical foundations of the American cultural tradition, as well as to the safety of turkeys, across the continent. And let's not go on too much further. The association of pumpkin pies with that fourth Thursday of every November is another superstition, certainly, but probably much less harmful a superstitious association than that of the turkey and the murdering of turkeys and that particular date. If anyone out there is listening, and if anyone has the ability to pardon all of the turkeys, whether they are related to you or not, I would suggest doing so as quickly as possible, and perhaps banning the mythological holiday that belongs currently to the American tradition. Not banning, but substituting the. Let's put it this way. There's a much better way of conducting your Thanksgiving meal, and it's represented precisely by those items and ingredients that we find in the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. Yes, popcorn, pink ice cream, Miss Pinky ice cream, and jelly beans. Yes, and was there something else in it to be? Pretzels, popcorn, pretzels, Miss Pinky ice cream, and jelly beans is what we recommend if we're going to retain the holiday of Thanksgiving and continue to propose that it belongs to the American tradition. Very quickly, let's continue with this so that we can move on with another discussion. A 2016, which in space-time travel communication coordinate systems would be 2019, study found 70% of therapists agreed synchronicity experiences could be useful for therapy. Analytical psychologists hold that individuals must understand the compensatory meaning of these experiences to enhance consciousness rather than merely build up superstitiousness. No, we don't like superstitiousness. It leads to all kinds of trouble. However, clients who disclose synchronicity experiences report not being listened to, accepted, or understood because their experiences of synchronicity are often associated with superstitious behavior and superstitious understanding and tricks of the mind played out as psychosis. However, clients who disclose, the experience of overabundance of meaningful coincidences can be characteristic of schizophrenic delusion. On the other hand, some studies suggest association between experiencing more meaningful coincidences such as synchronicity and creativity. Thor Johansson and Nazia Iram Osman write that prevalent among many scientists, particularly psychologists studying coincidences, is the view that the occurrence of coincidences as psychological experience is induced by noisy chance occurrences out in the world, which are often then misconstructed via irrational cognitive biases into unfounded, possibly even paranormal beliefs in the mind. End of quotation. A study has shown counselors and psychoanalysts were less likely than psychologists to agree chance coincidence was an adequate explanation for synchronicity, while more likely than psychologists to agree that a need for unconscious material to be expressed could be an explanation for synchronicity experiences in the clinical setting. And that's about all we need to know from the Wikipedia site that refers to the Jungian concept of synchronicity. Let's move on to the acausal system Wikipedia explanation, and we'll do so following a brief break because once again my sound vision correspondence is becoming asynchronic due to the limitations of the Apple Memoji program, which I am utilizing as a turkey to represent myself here in the form of a chicken. Hello! So here we are at the action that I just performed was that I clicked on the link that Wiki provides for a causal system, and we have arrived at a site titled Anti-Causal Systems. So although there is certainly a bijective function between the action click on the link and the result, which takes you to a Wikipedia site, it is perhaps not the bijective function that was expected, and we have arrived on the anti-causal system site. I will read the anti-causal system site, and I will discuss the manner in which it relates to the process of interpreting and creating space-time travel coordinate communication sets and acts of communication utilizing those sets and suggestions for the rearrangement of such sets as acts of communication within the system that operates, not necessarily as a bijective function, whether one goes click on the link or not. So let's continue. Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, always free, all the time, redirected, this is the anti-causal system, redirected from a causal system, and if you click on the link to a causal system, you'll get a message that says redirects to anti-causal system, even though the two things are not the same. Therefore, let's go on. In system theory, an anti-causal system is a hypothetical system with outputs and internal states that depend solely on future input values. Some texts and published research. Let's stop there and interpret what that means. Okay, for example, now, say that I were a hypothetical set, an anti-causal hypothetical set. Well, I'm not. I'm a turkey. But for the purposes of this discussion, I am the past and or present spokesperson for the American cultural tradition and or cultural memory complaint department, and as such, I made reference to two American traditions in the discussion of this particular event that constitutes this discourse, and those traditions that I referenced were Thanksgiving, the fourth Thursday of every November, with all of its superstitions regarding the eating of turkeys and the slaughter of turkeys. And I also mentioned Friday the 13th, another superstitious American tradition which associates black cats, falling off ladders, broken mirrors, etc., with the coincidence of the day of Friday and the date 13th of whatever month it happens to be. It doesn't have to be November to be Superstitious Friday. So Superstitious Friday and Thanksgiving are both part of the American cultural tradition, and I, of course, being the past and or present spokesperson for the American cultural tradition and or cultural memory, address such stuff, and therefore that falls within a causal system. In control theory, a causal system represents a system in which the output depends on past and or current inputs, and my current inputs are the spokesperson for the American cultural tradition and or cultural memory complaint department, and I was complaining about the tradition of Thanksgiving and its association with the killing of turkeys, and presenting a model that changes that situation entirely and utilizes the menu items on the Thanksgiving celebration that was so generously and intellectually organized by the Charlie Brown universe, and of course that Thanksgiving meal includes jelly beans and pinky ice cream, as well as pretzels. And what was the other thing? Popcorn, yes, popcorn. Great American tradition, and my reference is both a reference that uses the past and the current input values of my position. You see, and so if I were in discussing that particular aspect of of the output values for this discourse, I'm a causal system. Oh, but insofar as I'm discussing the indeterminacy of the semiotic system involving space-time travel communication coordinates, and the indeterminacy between phenomenon and intentional acts of communication versus phenomenon, so you could say semiotic systems versus phenomenal systems, then I am acting as the director of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency, which is a future designation, and I'm acting within an anti-causal system or a causal system. In fact, I'm acting neither exclusively within a causal system nor within an anti-causal system, and therefore you could say that I travel interdimensionally across systems, and those systems include universes that involve causation, anti-causation, and a-causation, and the same forms of activity are designated within the system of communication utilized by a contract in P&PSftACT variously, and one could say, for example, the input value 117 and the acknowledgement of the Rudresh Mahankapa transformations depended upon an understanding of a future input, which would be the elimination of two subscribers, and therefore operates within an anti-causal system, you see? Or you could say that it operates within a system that includes anti-causal relations, a-causal relations, as well as causal relations. So across the board, and making for a much more complicated universe of communication, as well as much more complicated series of causations overall. You see? So that's one way of looking at it. Let me begin again. In systems theory, an anti-causal system is a hypothetical system, such as myself, or at least allegorically presented here in the form of a turkey addressing you as a chicken, with outputs and internal states that depend solely, which I do not depend solely upon, but I depend partially upon, operating within three sets, you see, on future input values. But see, I also utilize past input values, present input values, and a-causal relationships between the two sets of values, the three sets of values, past, present, and future. Some textbooks and published research literature might define an anti-causal system to be one that does not depend on past input values, allowing also for the dependence on present input values. And presently, like, okay, so if we want to discuss present input values, then we could just say that the present input values depend upon an awareness of the future, but an independence from it, and an awareness of the past, but independence from it as well. Instances in which I discuss the events occurring within the present frame would be, for example, the inclusion of comments on the nature of the dogs doing the chewing of the bones, which seems to be smaller dogs than we've seen before in other examples of a contract in P&PSftACT's videos, in which we have these large dogs chewing on large bones and making loud thud crunching noises, and we have yep type of dogs making higher pitched noises, right? That's an input that accounts for a system allowing for the independence of present input values. You see? Okay, so an a-causal system is a system that is not a causal system. That is one that depends on some future input values and possibly on some input values from the past or the present. And that's basically the universe in which we operate. Although we're able to put up what one call boundaries. We can set boundaries within intentionalities and within the output constructs that are desired within certain systems. So, for example, like if I decide to set up a boundary between myself and say hedgehog, and I obviously I haven't done so, but if I decide to do that and disregard the relationship of the contract in P&PSftACT to hedgehog, then I've created what one might refer to as a distinction, you know, between like the entirety of a causal system and the operations of causal and anti-causal systems within that construct, right? And that can be contrasted with the interdependence of anti-causal, acausal, and causal systems that one might say are fluid rather than bound within acts of communication. This gets a little bit complicated, but let's go on. This is in contrast to a causal system which depends only on current and or past input values. This is often a topic of control theory and digital signal processing, which we're having a little bit of difficulty with here as we keep going out of sync. Anti-causal systems are also acausal, but the converse is not always true. An acausal system that has any dependence on past input values is not anti-causal, you see? And that's why, that's one of the reasons why we might set up semiotic boundaries between entities within the a-contract and P&PSftACT universe, either to thicken the plot or to provide interest in the development of particular areas of investigation. So, for example, you have a system of playlists, but the system of playlists doesn't correspond in a bijective function manner that is a one-to-one correspondence with anything else that goes on in the labyrinthine universe. An example of acausal signal processing is the production of an output signal that is processed from an input signal that was recorded by looking at input values both forward and backward in time from a predefined time arbitrarily denoted as the present time. In reality, that present time input as well as that future time input as well as the future time input values have been recorded at some time in the past, but conceptually it can be called the present or future input values in this acausal process. This type of processing cannot be done in real time as future input values are not yet known, but is done after the input signal has been recorded and is post-processed. And for example, like information that's provided in the time length of a video, where the narratological strategy is one of dissembling feigned ignorance, but the information provided in the time signature refers to a knowledge of the information that is feigned, that the narrating subject is feigning ignorance of, creates an irony, an interpretive problem for the viewer that falls under the category, or can fall under the category, of an anti-causal system satire, or if one prefers, an anti-causal system or acausal system irony. So one of the terms that we've been utilizing in terms of relationships to irony is stochastic irony. And a stochastic irony would involve one of these relationships that are indeterminate, and you could, within that system of stochastic irony, develop specifications of ironies that are either anti-causal, acausal, or that bear upon relationships between causal, anti-causal, and acausal. So let's move on now to Occam's razor. Hello, this is Tuki once again, and here we are at the Occam's razor Wikipedia site. And when we did our click from Occam's razor, we arrived at Occam's razor, which is, of course, once again, a bijective function, and precisely the bijective function that we expected. And perhaps I should explain why we're looking at Occam's razor. And the reason that we are looking at Occam's razor is we are trying to distinguish at this point in our discussion the difference between a superstitious coincidence and a meaningful synchronicity. And I propose that we can use the principle of Occam's razor, which is inferential rather than data-based evidence analysis, hence its reference to an abductive heuristic as opposed to a analytical and organized investigation of data, as a means of determining the distinction between a meaningless coincidence, such as the superstition of associating the killing of turkeys with the fourth Thursday of every month, which they should not every month of November, but certainly the fourth Thursday of November, which they should most certainly be pardoned for, whether they are related to the president or not, or even have any relationship with the president. And the meaningful apparent coincidence, which is constituted as a synchronicity by events such as a contract in through Theta's reorganization of the space-time travel, the past, present, complex space-time travel communication coordinate Rudrash Mahaplapa, and the elimination of two subscribers that both of which designate the number 117. Did I mention the fact that I have suggested that the complex space-time travel communication coordinate system should be renamed the even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate system, and that reference bears upon my future designation as the director of the Stochastic Intelligence Agency, which begins on January 20th. Yes, thank you. So, proceeding on to Occam's razor and its description as a means of distinguishing between irrelevant coincidences, which can be referred to as superstition, and meaningful coincidences, which can be referred to as synchronicities. And of course, the rationale behind this, once again, is that we are arguing that the number 117, as in the number of subscribers, and the number 117, as in the even more complex communication coordinate system number Rudrash Mahaplapa, is in fact a synchronicity and not a arbitrary superstitious coincidence, right? Okay, so let's proceed. Here is the description on the Wikipedia page for Occam's razor. In philosophy, Occam's razor, also spelled Occam's razor and Occam's razor, but not necessarily not Occam's razor and or Occam's razor. The Latin, and excuse my Latin, I am not an Italian and or Latin turkey, I am an American turkey. Novacula Occam is the problem-solving principle that recommends searching for explanations constructed with the smallest possible set of elements. It is also known as the principle of parsimony or the law of parsimony, once again in Latin, lex parsimoniae, attributed to William O. Occam, a 14th century English philosopher and theologian. 14th century means that he still existed in the Middle Ages or the Dark Ages, and it's amazing that people could be so smart in the Dark Ages when there was in fact no light whatsoever, and people lived in the shadows as they lived in the shadows in caves before Plato became the spokesperson for Socrates, and this was way before the Enlightenment, and following a period of relatively reasonable discussions of philosophy, which originated in, well, let's not get into all of that, but we're both in the early periods of classicism, and then came back to us in the Renaissance, which is the Renaissance, the rebirth of classicism, and also in the period of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason, in which there was light everywhere. In fact, there was no shadow in the Age of Reason whatsoever, and this could become a problem for painting, but which didn't belong to the Renaissance because they had both light and shadow, and that probably what made Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci much better painters than those British folks doing those ridiculous pre-Romanicisms and whatnot, in their portraiture during the Age of... Anyway, let's not get into all the history of aesthetics, but return to the problems of Occam's razor. let's see. Oh yes, attributed to William of Ockham, 14th century. That's what led us to the aside, the 14th century, the Dark Period. English philosopher and theologian, and is frequently cited as. And once again, forgive my my Turkey Latin. you know the dog Latin, the pig Latin, and then now we have the Turkey Latin. This is the Turkey Latin. And Entia non sunt multiplicanda preda necessitatem, which translates as, and this is my American English, as an American Turkey, entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity. Like perhaps that's one of those things like nature abhors a vacuum. It has no meaning and no truth in actual science, but it sounds good in Latin. Although Occam never used these exact words because he lived in the Dark Ages, and they never used exact words in the Dark Ages. Popularly, the principle is sometimes paraphrased as the simplest explanation is the best one. And as a simple example of this expression, the simplest explanation is the best one, one can take, for example, the question, why is Donald Trump the president-elect of the United States? And according to Occam's razor, the simplest answer would be because the plurality of the voting American public is stupid. And if one were simply regarding the abductive inference and abductive heuristic of Occam's razor as the basis on which to make a determination regarding the question, why is Donald Trump the president-elect of the United States, one could simply say, well, using an abductive heuristic such as Occam's razor, the answer is simply the plurality of the American public is stupid. All right, let's move on. The philosophical razor advocates that when presented with competing hypotheses about the same prediction, and both hypotheses have equal explanatory power, one should prefer the hypothesis that requires the fewest assumptions. And that is not meant to be a way of choosing, as I mentioned before, between an analytical set of values and data determined to solve a problem via the evidence of scientific investigation, but rather between hypotheses that make different predictions. Similarly, in science, Occam's razor is used as an abductive heuristic, and once again, we mentioned Charles Saunders Peirce. The word abductive comes from his analysis and explanation of determining logical inferences. The value of logical inferences based upon simplest explanation, and that's what abductive meant then, and it's what abductive continues to be now. Heuristic is, of course, a different word, and we're not going to get into all of that. In the development of theoretical models, rather than a rigorous arbiter between candidate models, which would be the scientific method, indeed, yes. Okay, so utilizing this model of Occam's razor to determine the distinction between superstitious understandings and comprehensions and the creative and meaningful values of synchronicity, let's utilize the example of contract in Theta, walking his dog, Caspar Hauser's learning curve outside, and inadvertently stepping in a pile of dog shit. Okay, and this could easily happen because a contract in Theta walks his dog, Caspar Hauser. Hello, this is Turkey once again, and as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by those technical difficulties. For example, I was giving an example, and the example that I was providing for determining the difference between superstitious coincidence and meaningful synchronicity via Occam's razor. I was providing an example utilizing a contract in phi through theta. Oh, and by the way, we realize that the more conventional pronunciation of a contract in phi through theta is exactly and precisely a contract in phi through theta. However, Aaron, who we have created no conceptual boundary for regarding our memory of him, past, present, and or future, for some reason refers to a contract in phi through theta as a contract in phi through theta rather than a contract in phi through theta, and therefore the rest of us here at a contract in phi through theta actually refer to a contract in phi through theta as a contract in phi through theta because we are making we are deferring to Aaron's pronunciation. And Aaron, to be fair to poor Aaron, he has no choice. We are incapable of altering his program to allow Aaron to pronounce a contract in phi through theta, a contract in phi through theta. And therefore, the rest of us who do have the option of pronouncing phi, phi, or pho have chosen to adopt Aaron's pronunciation of a contract in phi through theta as a contract in phi through theta and not a contract in phi through theta. But as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted by the technological difficulties, and then my own interruption of myself in favor of an explanation of our pronunciation of a contract in phi through theta. Say a contract in phi through theta were walking his dog, Caspar Hauser's learning curve, and stepped in a pile of dog shit. And this happened to be on a Friday the 13th, whether it was in November or December or January or any other date. And according to the American cultural tradition and or memory complaint department, the experience of the superstition of bad luck occurring on Friday the 13th is part of the American tradition. Yes? And if contract in phi through theta interpreted stepping in the dog poop as belonging to the causality, the causal system informing the causal universe that a contract in phi through theta exists in when he walks his dog Caspar-Hauser's learning curve, then this would be an example of superstition. And why is that precisely? Well, because in the neighborhood in which a contract in phi through theta lives, there is a lot of dog shit, because individuals who own dogs don't necessarily clean up after their dogs after they poop, either on the grass or elsewhere. And a contract in phi through theta has every opportunity to step in dog shit on every day of the week, whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, and any day of the month, whether it's the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, or beyond, right? So the simple coincidence that happens to be Friday the 13th and a contract in phi through theta taking his dog Caspar-Hauser's learning curve out for a walk and stepping in dog shit is recognized by contract in phi through theta as an example of superstition, and he doesn't take it seriously because it happens all the time. Because almost every day a contract in phi through theta walks his dog Caspar-Hauser's learning curve, and almost every day Caspar-Hauser's learning curve. Did I say Caspar-Hauser's learning curve walks his dog contract in phi through theta, or did I say a contract in phi through theta walks his dog Caspar-Hauser's learning curve? In any case, they're both walking one another, and either one of them is likely to step in dog shit because there's so much of it and it abounds, and people don't take the responsibility to clean up after their own dog's poop. A few exceptions withstanding, including a contract in phi through theta. Caspar-Hauser's learning curve never cleans up his own dog poop, but fortunately he has an owner who does. So anyway, that's an example of why this would be regarded as a superstitious coincidence if it were taken as being meaningful. Now, let's look at the other example. Rudra Smalanthapa. Like, how often does a contract in phi through theta revise Rudra Smalanthapa's playlist? Well, he's presented it, he's put it there, he's created it and put it out there initially. But this is the first and only, thus far, revision of complex, that is to say, past and or present complex space-time travel communication coordinate and or future, even more complex space-time travel communication coordinate number 117. It's the first time it's ever been revised. And it's also the first time that the number of viewers has dropped from 119 to 117. And so the distinction between that synchronization and the synchronization of stepping in dog shit on Friday the 13th is entirely different, right? Because of the likelihood, right? The probability. If you do the probability calculus, in all likelihood, Occam's razor suggests that the coincidence or the synchronicity of the event of Rudrish number 117, Manathapa, and 117 viewing subjects of a contract in phi through theta. Occam's razor suggests this is a meaningful and significant act of communication rather than an arbitrary event or phenomenon. You see? Alright. And hopefully there will be no further technical difficulties. Thank you very much for paying attention, and I look forward to serving in the new contract in phi through theta administration as the director, chief, secretary, and or head of the SIA, that is, i.e., Stochastic Intelligence Agency. Have a good day.